Welcome, everybody, to Voice Overview. I'm Jeff Grossman, future voice actor. Pat, it's a pleasure to have you.
I'm really happy to be here. That's Krang. I think the Wildcat would say, "Yeah, hi, Jeff. How are you? My dog's over here. Come here. I got to introduce you to Bob.
You need Bob over for dinner?
I don't want Bob for dinner.
We'll have to deal with Bob.
He's never gone!
Say hi to Jeff."
So, we've already established in my first question that you and Cam Clark are actually cousins.
Yes. Cam, I'd worked with on and off, and he was the youngest of the King family. And they're my second cousins, the women. And I got to work, and Cam was cast as Leonardo originally on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so I got 9 years of working with Cam, my cousin. Now I got to do something about Bob.
Sideshow Bob!
A note for my audience is that he was also one of your minions. He was Rocksteady.
Yes. And matter of fact, Fred Wolf was very economic, the producer. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Rob got to do, and Barry Gordon and Cam Clark never did anything but their own voices until they did Rocksteady and Bebop, because we didn't have any guests. Mm-hmm. Fred said, "Okay, you're light on your contract. You'll do that." Really? I don't do an Asian voice. You do now. So we learned a great deal.
To my knowledge, Cam was also one of the first ever Smurf voices for the Smurfs and the Magic Flute movie that was brought in from Europe.
Oh. Hooray! Hooray! I've won! But you, sire, you have lost your bet, huh?
Yeah, I was a Smurf for a New York minute, and got to do the TV show. But I was so high because I had to be Hefty's friend, and he was high, so I was high. And the director said, "Go higher, Pat. Go higher." I mean, I probably killed a dog on Cahuenga.
All right, then it's settled. I, Tuffy Smurf, will paint Big Mouth's toenails. And since this is short party, Lazy, you can help me. Yay, Lazy! Yay, Tuffy!
And they sped it up by 4%. So, man, did I ever go high. I did about 4 or 5 shows, I think. It's Tuffy. I ain't afraid of no cat. Give me a salmon breath.
I bet you could do the goon characters from Popeye. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Alice the Goon, she was that big, hefty creature from the moon.
I wonder what's on their furry minds.
Vaguely. I saw a Popeye show once being recorded, but that's about it. I like Popeye.
Did you know Jack Mercer?
No, I got to see him work, though.
What about Jackson Beck? Because he was the narrator for G.I. Joe when you were Ace and Airtight.
And Barbecue.
Well, I wasn't Barbecue, by the way, ever. That was Lauren
Lester.
But I did Wild Weasel, and Ace.
Wild Weasel to Undersea Base Delta. Nothing in this sector. I'm moving over to... Wait a minute. A task force. A battleship, 3 cruisers, and 6 destroyers.
And to answer your question, no, because Jackson Beck was always in New York.
G.I. Joe will return after these messages. This is the G.I. Joe headquarters, and there's never been a command post like it.
Man the battle tank!
A real American hero.
I've located Cobra. We've captured a Cobra officer. Put him in the stockade. Way to go, Joe! Fire! We chased off Cobra. We saved the G.I. Joe headquarters.
G.I. Joe headquarters. All figures and equipment sold separately from Hasbro. Now back to G.I. Joe.
We were in L.A.
That makes sense, because the voice actors I've interviewed from the Transformers side of things, Victor Corelli, who was the narrator for Transformers and Transformers the movie, none of them had ever met him. And the magic of voice acting is you don't have to do it all in one place. But I didn't always know that. It's amazing the things that I've learned ever since my other interviews. It just widened the whole world for me, and it's easier to imagine now, but it doesn't take away from the magic at all.
Well, I left Australia when I was doing plays, and I realized I'd be doing better if I did exaggerated performances. I was great at French farce, but the pilot light went out on Chekhov. So when they liked my exaggerated work, I thought, well, where do they need that? Cartoon voices. I never thought about doing cartoon voices. So I moved and went to Los Angeles because Hanna-Barbera, they made all the cartoons in those days, in the 70s, in Los Angeles. I was born in Seattle, and I went to college in Walla Walla and at Cornell. And then I emigrated to Australia to work. And so I went through that process. I was there for a couple of years, and then I came back to the States.
It's like the opposite of Cyril Richard from Peter Pan.
Tempo, Captain!
Tempo, tempo, tempo. A tango.
A tango! Unrip your plan, Captain.
To cook a cake quite large and fill each layer in between.
It is. We couldn't get into England at that time. Mm-hmm. It was very few theater jobs were going in the States, and I didn't want to walk the streets of New York. I had no video training, no film training whatsoever. So there were only two actors that were American at that time in Australia. There was Mel Gibson and me, and we both worked. He was going to school, he was a little younger than I, and I was working. That was it.
Well, you can guess which two of you I actually like better. Question 1 is one that I've asked everyone except Michael Bell because it didn't occur to me at the time, but this is how I can tell something about my heroes. The traditional question is, when you were younger, what was your opinion of Rocky and Bullwinkle, if anything?
Well, I didn't understand it when it came out. I was old enough, probably about 10 or 11 when it came out. I didn't get it. I thought it was insane. It's sort of like hearing Jimi Hendrix for the first time. I remember I went, what is this? And later, I get it. It's like the Beatles. They were advanced. And so I didn't get it. Then I loved it. I loved the writing, and I got to know some of the people that worked in the show. Bill Scott, I got to know. Dawes Butler, June Foray. I got to know him when I worked at Hanna-Barbera with them, but I adored that show.
Yeah, and it's amazing what they could do with such a small cast.
Excuse me for interrupting you, Jeff. Jay Ward hated networks, and he produced the show. And he would produce it and not go on the networks. He hated, he would go syndicated. And so he got away with murder compared to the other people on networks who were censored.
This, I haven't read it all the way through, but what I've read so far, it's amazing. I mean, the only reason Rocky and Bullwinkle is as good as it is because everybody saw that despite the limits that they would face, they went past them.
The Moose That Roared, the story of Jay Ward, Bill Scott, and Flying Squirrel, and Talking Moose. Paul Frees was on that show too.
Yeah, and it's like I was saying, it's easy to tell who is who because most times the actors alternated between the characters that weren't the core cast.
Yes.
So the only exception to that rule was that there were two separate segments where Dawes Butler worked alongside Bill Scott and June Foray. That was the Fractured Fairy Tales and Aesop's Fables, which also featured Charles Ruggles as Aesop and Edward Everett Horton as the narrator for Fractured Fairy Tales. But on the Dudley Do-Right and Peabody side, Paul Frees resumed his normal post like he did in the Rocky and Bullwinkle segments. And
yes.
Once you've heard the voice range of each of the actors, it's so easy to identify who's who.
Yes.
I could go on forever about what I love about Rocky and Bullwinkle, but I think we've got the message. Which brings me to question 2. A lot of the shows in the 90s and 80s that you were in, they were directed by Susan Blue. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Men in Black, and others. The atmosphere of the voice sessions with her, in your opinion, they would rely heavily on the quality of the director, wouldn't they? And more specifically, Susan's approach. Now, I've spoken to Susan. I've interviewed her. She's wonderful. And some of the other charges that she's had under her wing, they swear by her. I just want to know, from your perspective, what Sue was like.
Sue, I'd have a hobby if it weren't for Sue Blue. I worked with her a lot. She was really straight ahead. She and Virginia McSwain, wonderful directors. Jenny was crazier, but Susan had the producers breathing down her neck all the time. So she kept to the script, and early on we'd rehearse, but later we didn't. We just did it about 4 times and moved on with Men in Black for years. But she was a really good, solid person in drama. So she knew how to create the drama and get the humor. Jenny was, they always said that my characters were flowers like black orchids, but Jenny liked that. She liked we were strange. Susan wanted things pretty straight ahead. But I enjoyed working with both of them.
I think one of the methods to Jenny McSwain's madness could have been that because you were doing anthropomorphic animals as characters, it gave you the freedom to break the bonds of reality even further by going through with your wackiness.
Both of them went to Stevens College. And Stevens College was small, and they both majored or did a lot of drama. So they were both very fine actors. And I think that Virginia especially appreciated being wild and appreciated actors that were not ordinary actors. So it was less about doing anthropomorphic animals as very good performances. Believable.
As far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me, in the realm of cartoons, the bar for believable is set way differently than any other medium, and you can get away with so much with it, even if the genre isn't, meant to be wacky. I mean, in your case, you were the Worms, you were Mr. Sabin of Scintilla in one of the episodes with David Warner, and I think you also played his heart.
Bad boy. Oh, heartburn.
And David Warner was a wonderful guy, wonderful actor. He goes, I love what you do. I'm sort of like a plumber. I've put in so many toilets and I've not used them. I mean, of the 9 years of doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I've probably seen only 6 episodes. I liked them. And the funniest show I've seen, the whole show, and I saw about 13 of them, was The Tick. It was hilarious.
So that was another show you worked with Townsend Coleman on.
Yeah, I worked with Townie on a lot of stuff.
What's he like?
He's a very versatile guy, and our kids went to, he's a Christian, and we both had our kids at the same school, Village Christian, and we used to have church of the open car door. Before we do a session, we'd get together and pray before we'd go in. And he's a divine guy, but he was always like a little nervous to be around we pros, even though he was a professional. Very interesting, because he started in radio, and he actually dipped in a promo for a while, and so he's done more than we have.
I can understand, because despite whatever experience a voice actor has, from my perspective, there's always going to be that hero worship of your fellow peers to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I first went to Hanna-Barbera, there was Michael Bell and Rip Taylor and Joni Gerber and Frank Welker, all these luminaries, these amazing performers, and I thought, oh, I don't belong. I had to do 4 or 5 shows before I got the idea, oh, that's the same character, but a different dialect. Because as Michael Bell says, we're sort of like Mr. Potato Head. They called something, we change ears and nose and go in an audition.
I had the honor of speaking to Michael first before any of the other voice actors I've interviewed. He gave me the confidence and the courage to continue with this. And Greg Berger and Lee Takar and the others I've interviewed, they've all contributed to that. And despite the occasional nervousness that I have before I do an interview nowadays, I really feel like I've blossomed as a amateur voice actor and interviewer because of people like Bell and people like you.
Good. Well, if you don't mind, Jeff, I need to deal with Bob. Bob wants...
Voice Overview will return after B's messages. At Celestin's, we know how important those little moments are, so we've brought back the Impossible Meal 4-pack at the impossible price of just 7 Nevercoins. That's right, 4 burgers, 4 fries, just 7 Nevercoins. But hurry, this offer won't last long. And to make those special moments even more special, the Benevola and Ubigo Gladimeal pack is back. 8 figures to collect and 15 special variant cards to collect in 2 packs of 3. 1 in every Gladimeal you buy, or just an extra 2 Nevercoins to your order. Never say never at Celestin's. Be now return to Voice Overview. Your experience, what do you feel are the biggest constraints that a voice actor has to deal with that an on-camera actor wouldn't have to or even think of?
We have no costume, so we don't have help that way. We have little direction. So we sort of have to kind of create it. We only can be heard. Like my friend and comedian Brad Garrett says, kid, we got to give them a little bit more because they can't see us.
I love Brad Garrett. He is always funny.
Well, I've known Brad a long time. He's a dear friend. He's one of my closest friends. He's a wonderful guy and funny. First time I met him was Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. He was brought in to do the Hulk, and he was opening for Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. But he wanted to get off the road. He wanted to do something other than that, and he started and succeeded.
It's amazing how many on-screen actors have also made their bread and butter as voice actors, and the first thing that comes to mind to me is Mark Hamill.
For a real demonstration, we're pumping our studio audience full of my patented laughing gas. These yahoos laugh at anything now, even the phone book.
Yes,
we all know.
I did a show with Mark Hamill after Star Wars. Wonderful guy and very skilled. Why? Because he learned how to do voiceover from doing Star Wars for the BBC.
Yeah, and the way I understood it, he was one of those kids who would go into a record store and go straight back to the children's section where all the LPs for like the Hanna-Barbera, Looney Tunes, and everything was. Things that children these days would have no idea what those are, but I was fortunate to still have grown up where I had memories of having vinyl LPs. I still have a Yogi Bear one.
Yeah.
From Kellogg's.
Right. And Mark also had his own comic book with his cousin. And so he loved that world, like Seth Green. You know, I met Seth Green at Nickelodeon. He was the teenager on Austin Powers.
He was Scott Evil, and he was also the modern Leonardo when you went back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's when I met him, and I went, Seth Green, and he went, Pat Fraley. And, you know, I'm very surprised he knew my name, but he's a geek. You know, he's a nerd. He knows things that other people don't know, just like Mark Hamill did, or does.
Hey, I'm proud to be a geek. Is the most liberating thing because you can blend in with other people as long as you don't have the pocket protector, and I don't I don't have the need for spectacles except in the sun. Being a voice actor and being a voiceover aficionado both have that gift of being able to blend in and be able to stand out. It's a paradox, but it's the perfect kind of paradox.
Well, I was always exaggerated because my grandfather was the superintendent of deaf schools in North Dakota and Idaho. So my mom was very exaggerated, and she would have sign to me when we talk. And so I grew up comfortable with exaggeration, and I never got rid of it. And at 4 years old, I was performing and teaching, two passions God gave me. And I was good at both because of God.
And that leads me to number 4. In one of our previous conversations, you wanted me to plug your vocation as a voice teacher, found at patfraleyteaches.com. Now, as far as teaching goes, which is something I think you and Michael Bell both do, what is your approach, your curriculum? What would it cost? And do you help your graduates find work? And are there any prerequisites you have to have in order to be a student? If you need me to repeat any of the things I just said.
That's four things. Number 1, no prerequisites. Okay.
Good to know.
A good teacher encourages a person to hone their skills and creates new skills for them to acquire. Second, the home study courses, which are 5 lessons approximately each one, is about $300. And they send me an MP3 and I get back to them and guide them. So they do homework on all 3. And they hear audio and they get a workbook. There are masters and majors. The major is 5 home study courses put together for $1,200, as is the master's program. Well, those are a little bit different. And my approach is what I said: a good teacher. A master teacher is by their accreditation, if they've got a master's, their reputation, and what they've done, their credits. But I don't believe in helping people with their motivation with regard to acting. That's up to God and them. I don't deal with that much. But I do encourage, and I never discourage.
And I've seen what Doss Butler's barn looked like, how he had all those drawings and everything of the people that he's taught for, and what a wonderful guy.
Yeah, Doss Butler was a wonderful actor. In fact, he was the best voiceover ever, even better than Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc was the most dynamic. Doss Butler was the best actor. And, the funny part is Doss was about 4'11". He was a teeny guy. And, Mel Blanc looked like someone drew him. We all came at that time from unsuccessful something. I was an unsuccessful theater person. Jim Cummings, a wonderful voiceover, was an unsuccessful musician. So we came in damaged and found a life.
I'd say that based on what you just said, the voiceover industry is not only therapeutic, it's the ultimate polish.
Pretty good.
I'd like to think so after all the years that I've worshipped not only the industry, but the people in it. What is a typical range of reactions that you witness when someone listens to you talking in the course of your everyday life and thinks that you sound familiar?
Well, I don't sound familiar. What comes to mind, Jeff, is kids. Because, if you do some character that you've always done, you kids can't be in here. And they go, oh, he just does a good impression of a duck. If they close their eyes, then they're taken back to Ninja Turtles or a show they like, G.I. Joe. So I don't get what I get because, I've gone down from a high baritone to a low baritone, nearly bass. That's because I use my voice on my whole career. And I have a very good speaking voice. Well, they say, well, I could tell you were in voiceover. Well, I never use this voice, ever.
That's why I didn't recognize you when I've talked to you all these times.
No, I character voices. So, yeah, it's gotten better, but I never use it except when I'm buying lettuce.
I guess it's different for people who include their normal voice with their range. Like when I interviewed Susan, she was a prime example because a lot of the voices she does are just minor amplifications of her normal voice, which she also uses.
Well, she has a unique kind of sound, like a swallow. She's a singer. Now, like Peter Cullen, who did Optimus Prime, he can't go without people recognizing his voice because he uses that deep baritone. He's from Canada and was a star there before he came down.
Yeah, I've seen some footage from the variety show that he was in. That, but there was also something Brothers, Hudson Brothers.
Yes, Danny Mann's dad produced that, and he also produced Sonny and Cher, and Peter came down and did that. That's how he got down to L.A.
Question 6 is the voiceover industry more accommodating to people with disabilities, like autism, for instance, nowadays than when it was in the 1980s and prior?
Short answer is yes. They used to call people Asperger's or autism or something, but now it's all on the spectrum because we're all on the spectrum. Now, I mean, it used to be that a person with Asperger's, my great nephew has Asperger's. I have one of my dear friends is what we used to call autism. They put them on a bus and they go to a public school because they had resources. They'd be humiliated all day. And then they come home and watch a cartoon and they'd be connected. And I'll give you an example. Morgan, my pal, I got a call from New York from a psychologist asking if I'd take a call from a student of theirs, a patient of hers that was autistic. I said, sure. I found out that that's what her life was, but when she came home, she watched Tailspin. Now, if you recall, Tailspin was Disney, and they had a hard time casting it because he looked stupid. But I thought, well, I'll play him naive. But who is this wrench or a banana? I forgot. Oh, look, the new item on the map. Wait, no, it's guacamole. So it was delightful. It was cute. Here's Morgan watching the cartoon Monday through Friday, and she's seeing somebody that was special, like they used to call it special too, right?
Yeah.
That everyone loved. And so it changed my life. I still connect with her and went over to Corning and went to a graduation she had. And, because it gave meaning to my life, because my life has really only been about amusing people. Greek is amuse means not think, but it changed things when I benefited people. And I'll go to a convention, and because I've been around autism, Ed Asner's son was what they called autistic on the spectrum. Joe Mantegna's daughter is high on the spectrum. So I've been around all my life. I would get people in line, and they would come up and they'd say, do that voice, do this voice, do that. Can you do that? And they come over and hug me. And I didn't blink because I knew that they were on the spectrum. Just like we haven't talked about your hesitation every so often. I don't care. Neither does the world.
That's one of the reasons why I love doing this, is because everybody that I've talked to, they've sooner or later in their life, they've met people like me, and they've seen everything.
Or been that way. I mean, remember, as I talked about a failed musician, a short person, this and that, we're all failures at something. So it's a community of damaged goods. Nobody gets out of school and goes, I'm going to be a voiceover and do ducks for a living. It happens. And so we don't care. We don't care what we look like. We don't care what we sound like. It doesn't really matter.
It's a good lesson for the world, and I really wish that people would take it.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot of things I wish the world were better at, but they're not.
Yeah, it makes you seasick in the worst way.
Well, it makes you trust in the Lord and trust in His plan, not theirs.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it does. Barry is Jewish, and get this, he's playing an egghead, right? Donatello. When he went through our classes in 9 years, he brought books in. He went through law school. He became a lawyer while he was doing the show. You talk about an egghead.
I guess he was also supplementing his income as the Nestle cook.
We have to stop her.
I'll distract her with some quick.
And I'll tie her up.
Chocolatey quick? Looks like she's tongue-tied, too.
Who are you talking to? Nobody.
Nestle quick. It's magic in the making.
Supplement, he was doing that. You supplement, you do, I do hundreds and hundreds of shows, and we can't afford to turn one down. I've done the best shows and the worst shows. I was in The Little Clowns of Happy Town, directed by Susan Blue, and it was the worst show ever. But, that's the way it is. We're rate plus workers. We get rate plus 10% for our agents, not out of the money. So that's the way it is.
Here's a good one. What resources would you recommend for anyone wanting to join the voiceover profession but doesn't have experience or capital or both?
A good question, that, but the answer was ridiculously simple.
Experience or capital, forget that. Just have fun. Have fun and forget about voiceover or just be silly and take improv and go to school, do your plays, all that stuff. It's fun. It's enjoyable. And if you can make a living doing something other than act, go ahead and do it. If you must act, then act.
So you don't have to be in a professional box behind a microphone to be considered a voice actor.
Well, Steve Martin, who was the comedian actor, said a lot of people would ask him, how do you become a success? And they wanted to hear, this is how you get an agent, this is how you get a manager. And he said, I never did that. And no one ever took my advice. The advice is this: get better than everybody. Okay, then you don't have to go to parties. They come to you. That's what happened to me. By the time I was 30, I came to town and I started doing cartoons. I was really good at performing. And I also say, yes, I was versatile, but I really cheated. I acted. But I was a good actor. And so people came after me. I didn't have to go to parties and go have lunches and do this and do that. No, they said, get that Pat Fraley or somebody like him. And that made my career.
Being able to do 113 different voices that aren't necessarily my own, I do classify myself as a voice actor. I've never found any opportunity to do it professionally, but I just want to be sure that from an actual voice actor standpoint that technically I would be considered a peer, even if I don't have professional credit.
I don't know. You're asking me, are you any good?
It's about the size.
Do you find that you don't hem and haw as much when you do a character? Like people with a stammer don't do much when they sing.
It's because it comes from a different side of the brain.
Right. So that's a good thing. I mean, as far as how good you are and this and that, I don't know. I have no idea. But there are people that I work with all the time that I never made a judgment on them. They're good at what they do. They auditioned and they got the role.
I guess the old axiom is true that people are their own worst critics, unless it's Leonard Maltin about Transformers the movie, which I disagree with.
By the way, Leonard Maltin was 16 when he started putting out books.
Wow.
I met him. He's my age. And of course, I met him in my 40s. I said, "You're Leonard Maltin?" Turns out he had a good idea for a book, and the publisher said, "Yeah, well, you write it." So he did. He was 16. I can't turn down a show. So why would I go in and have a bad time for about 4 hours or 3 hours doing a show? I have a good time no matter what I do.
8 hours under Wally Burr.
Oh, Lord, he caused the strike. He'd take us for 12 hours. Wally Burr, he's the only guy who would take 3 or 4 takes to do a slate. We used to play, Neil Ross and I used to play GI Golf. We'd look at one line like, all right, man, come on this way. That was a line, right? Mm-hmm. I'd say, well, okay, I'll say that's a par 3. And I would be wrong. I'd get a par 4 or 5 takes on one line. That's simple. And they weren't used. In fact, he got fired from Hanna-Barbera for being slow before he did G.I. Joe.
Krang's mannerisms and different voicial tones in the same sentences. Would you be able to demonstrate some of your most quoted lines that you've done for Krang?
What I need to know? I'd rather rot in a septic tank.
How would you like to be boiled in oil with just a touch of cilantro?
I'd rather you rot in a septic tank, Krang.
Well, you probably know more than I do. I know that Krang came from having heart indigestion when I screamed to my boys. That's what I would talk back. I learned that in the 4th grade, talking backwards. Hi, how are you? But I incorporated that into what I did was I took the evil, bodiless blob, mean but funny description. I took over a guy's role that got fired early on in the pilot. Stu Rosen was the director. He cast himself in 4 major roles. I could only do 3.
Soon the entire world will be at my feet. What feet? You really know how to hurt a person, don't you?
Wolf called me in and I auditioned. Susan Blue was directing and I got the role. But it was all based on throwing it against the wall and see what stuck. And it's the weirdest voice I've ever done in my life, or will do in my life. But that's the way it is. And here again, I work with James Avery, who is a Johnny One-Note, a wonderful actor, but he always the same, right? Well, I knew I could go all over the place. And we would get along perfectly. And we were known as the odd couple from outer space.
No matter if these readings are correct, we will soon have no more need of your Johnny Rock.
That's a really good impression. You know who else does a really good impression? Who did it professionally? Townsend. I was on vacation and Fred Willis said, "Who does Krang?" And Townsend raised his hand. I always humiliate him for years over there. Yeah, I'm on vacation. You do my voice, thank you. But he can do a really fine one, too.
I shall turn 2 of my own minions into unbeatable super ninjas. What? Who? Bebop, Rocksteady, come up here at once. Not those 2. It would take a miracle. That's exactly what I had in mind. I should never have joined forces with a ninja. Next time I conquer a planet, I'm using an accountant.
I could tell that it wasn't your voice as Krang. Just like how I could tell when Hal Rail filled in for either Barry or Rob when they were out of town.
Rob was filled in too. I don't know who did it. But anyway, 9 years, come on. What show do you see once a week? What the cast? Everybody, once a week, 9 years. That didn't even happen with Bonanza.
You know what's really funny is that line that I quoted from this. The camera was panned onto Shredder's character when you were talking, so I thought as a kid, for some reason, Shredder was trying to fill in Krang's line.
No more need of your shoddy work.
Shredder, line, your shoddy work.
I mean, in the imagination of a 5-year-old, it really...
really, better than what was presented.
And then they both disappeared.
That treacherous piece of slime! Shredder wants the alien technology for himself. Pay attention now, Bebop. This is the fission plant. You are to go there, find the alien source of power, and bring it to me. And remember, this is your last chance.
G-Tanks.
One thing I changed was, you talk about acting, is when this was a character who wanted to rule the world. Every time in the shows something went wrong, and he had a line that was written by David Wise or the actors, "Oh no," which is usually a high shot of an actor going, And so I go, fine, I will reduce the earth and rule from the Tector realm. And I get the line, and I go, oh no.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. You're not again!
Because he knows he's a loser. He's waiting for the moment when he loses every time he loses. And that's acting. It's motivation.
In the 90s and prior, voice actors were able to portray those who were not of their own nationality. A character that you played in one episode named Kazuo Saki. He was a metropolitan Japanese police officer and Shredder's brother.
Who said that? Lieutenant Saki, Tokyo Metropolitan Police. My baby brother, Kazuo. So, Mommy finally let you put on long pants, huh?
Do you believe that attitudes towards this practice have changed, and if so, has there been backlash behind the scenes? Like with Hank Azaria and his role of Apu in The Simpsons.
Well, you're going on, but there's two things in your question. Yes, it has changed, and yes, it's gotten more strict. Used to be that we would do African Americans. I personally didn't do them. I did them in the Tick, and I said, look, I'll play the mustache. I won't play, I won't my old school African American dialect. I'll play a nervous mayor. But that was I said that I will only do an African American if I have control over what he says. But we could do everything. Now, and every cop was Irish. Now it's getting to the point where you have to be Irish to do Irish. And so they once said, okay, you're a Mr. Wu, the Oriental, wasn't Mr. Was, and the Centurions. He was the head of, you'll go out and do this and do that, right? He was the guy. Dr. Wu. And they said, you're Dr. Wu. I said, no, you're lying in your contract. I don't do an Asian. You do now. And the only Asian I knew was Japanese. At that time, it was about printing. Mr. Fraley, you're on already. We had no volume control. And so all the actors would leave the studio when I had a Dr. Wu passage because I was so bad. And I can't remember those days, but things are changing. And I don't say for better or for worse, they're changing.
I'd say that it's more sensitive if they're taking it in the right direction.
Everything's more sensitive.
What actors, apart from James Avery, do you feel you had either the most fun with or the most connection with behind the mic?
Pete Cullen, because he's a little shorter than I am. He's shorter than I am, right? He's a little depressed as a human being. I'm taller, and I'm kind of a fun guy. And so they write, like in Rainbow Bright, they write murky and lurky. He was murky, and he was a...
I love flowers.
I hate flowers. Yeah. flowers make me sick. Yeah.
You know, and I was stupid, you know, and had fun. And we did a couple shows together, and they knew what we were like, and they wrote for us, and I love that. I love working with Pete. Also, Rob Paulson and I have worked a lot together because he is a versatile tenor, and I'm a versatile baritone. So we did Bobby's World together, and we did this show and that show and Ninja Turtles, and I dearly love Rob. Love working with him. He used to hand me my ad libs, and vice versa. That's how close we were.
Yeah, I remember now that another character that you did, besides the Channel 6 exec, Bern Thompson, you were also Casey Jones, the Vigilante.
Oh, no? Then what are you doing here?
We're trying to stop the guys who did that.
I'm the top gun crime fighter in this town. I'll handle this. I'll teach them respect for the law.
Got an idea. Look, Casey, that man down the street. Isn't he jaywalking?
Why, that's against the law. Come back, miscreant. How dare you cross in the middle of a street?
Well, you know, we worked fast, and they said, you're Casey Jones, because we had no guests. I said, Casey Jones, what? And they showed me a picture of him, and I went, yeah. And they said, well, think of young Clint Eastwood. Hello, Violator. So I played a young Clint Eastwood, and that's a very popular character.
Yeah.
When I do conventions and signing conventions, I sign a lot of his pictures, Casey Jones.
Yeah, I remember one exchange between you and your cousin where they were trying to get Casey off their trail. Casey, look! Isn't that guy jaywalking? Hey, that's against the law.
In the same
episode,
that
same guy
Casey chased after.
That man's littering.
Yeah. Well, Casey was like Rules. And he was the most violent of all of them, because he had a golf bag with a baseball bat in it and a club and.
Pal, class is paying 101. Your instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
A Jose Canseco bat? Tell me you didn't pay money for this.
Ooh.
I just want to showcase a few of my favorite lines that you've done.
Listen to your mother, Shredder. Soon the entire world will be at my feet.
What feet?
You really know how to hurt a person, don't you?
A TV remote control? Somebody's already invented that, crank.
Don't be ridiculous. All my inventions look like TV remote controls. This one I call my docilizer. I can't wait to see the entire world turn into timid rabbit-like creatures. Think of it, my own petting zoo.
Well, those are well-written lines, probably by David Wise. The writers got really good. The first year we did Ninja Turtles, we ad-libbed a lot. The second it became a hit, they were on us. But the writing got better. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jeff.
Again, I really want to thank you for your time, Pat, and for the autograph.
My pleasure.